Hello and welcome, folks, to another edition, a very special edition of RSF Radio. Today is October 18th, and I have the pleasure of inviting a longtime friend to the podcast. You're listening to RSF Radio, where we typically talk about what's been going on the front page of our Street Fighter, but I have got to stop the presses. You might know him from... I feel like I can't introduce you any other way without giving it away. It's HitBox Sora, everybody. He's like he's the synonymous person, at least I have in my mind, for HitBox. Because you've had that in front of your name for so long, it feels like, since the SF4 era. I've seen your name in the weekly brackets from time to time, and remember that name from so long ago. It's been HB Sora, and remember watching your tutorial videos to learn how to use a hitbox, even though I don't myself play on a hitbox. It's always something I've considered, but how the hell are you, man? What's up?
I'm good. I cannot ask for a better intro, by the way.
No, hey man, it's one of those things where, like, I've known of you for so long. We've only talked a couple of times, but saw each other at Evo, and then talked about running this, and you had some news that you wanted to share about Hitbox. And I think that, typically when I have guests on, I typically like to start with, what they got going on. What do they want to pitch? But in your case in particular, I think I'm going to take a sideways and say, why should I care about Kingdom Hearts? Is it good?
That's a curveball question. It is. It also has the most convoluted storyline in the planet.
You don't say.
Yes, I know, right? The action RPG elements of it is bar none the best. The best in the series being Birth by Sleep. If you have not played Birth by Sleep, if you're playing any one game, play that one.
Okay.
Because it's absolutely amazing.
Okay, all right, that's a good pitch. Obviously, I bring that up. That's where you get your name from. That's just in my mind been synonymous with you. Never touched the series myself. I know that Goofy is in it. Goofy's in it.
Yes. Goofy's a badass. I'm just gonna have to say that right now.
That's a quote you can put on the back of the box of this podcast.
Yes,
Goofy is a badass.
He takes like hits like no other person. He even quote unquote dies for Sora at some point.
Goofy is a badass hitbox Sora. Okay.
Yep. Goofy's a
All
badass.
right, so with that in mind, folks, moving forward, let's talk about hitbox stuff. Because let me ask you this: how long has that been a thing for you? How long have you been affiliated with Hitbox?
Okay. Hitbox started literally start of SF4.
Mm-hmm.
I was affiliated right around when Vanilla Marvel dropped, the 6 months before Ultimate dropped, because I was already playing not Marvel but Soul Calibur 4 at the time. To switch to a controller. They were local. I was in Vegas. They were in Vegas. I played. We became friends. Ultimate Marvel dropped right around 2012. I got really good at it, and yeah, I was one of the first players they quote unquote sponsored.
Yeah, I remember watching videos of your lightning loops with Zero.
Yep, very. My most famous video, arguably, is the how to I Need the Zero video. It's a music video, combo video that is using Bonnie Tyler's. It's really good.
All right. Well, with that in mind, then how did this start? Because you're a little bit deeper with Hitbox now, not just like sponsored player. You're like in it now.
Right. So after my player stint, fast forward to 2017. After Evo 2017, I was still in Vegas and I was talking with the founders. We were still friends, even though like they stopped sponsoring players for a while. And for the time was really marketing. Their digital marketing was really distant but close to it. They had a website and that was about it. I am on my day job a professional marketing a marketing professional.
Really?
So I decided, yes,
I should have
I'm a
asked you
digital
that
marketer.
a long time ago. I could use a marketer. I'm shit at it.
So we just talked and I'm like, okay, I can do this digital marketing stuff for you. But also, one of the biggest things I've wanted to do in esports for a while was manage teams. I wanted the experience to kind of handle player relations, community relations, and all that. So this position I have now with HitBox, which is kind of like, call it anything internally, but I guess it's marketing executive. I don't know, whatever it is. I handle both their digital marketing stuff, so anything on social media, as well as their website. Manage the team, quote unquote, which we're now talking about today.
Right. All right. So, what do you guys have planned in terms of marketing now? You were talking about maybe sponsoring players, perhaps, or something along those lines in the future.
So a little bit of clarification in that sense. We've already been doing what I'm about to talk about for quite a bit now. You might have seen Punisher play on Street Fighter. You might have seen Automatic to an extent, and now Zamu. Those relationships with those players have already been existing in the background. But what changed recently to make it publicly official, not just under the table kind of, oh, okay, let me send you to this event, so on and so forth.
Right.
Just being a little bit more formal about it to players. Like the whole spiel now. Well, I don't want to.
Yeah, get into it. That's why I cut out the beginning of this show to talk about whatever my guests have going on. I want to talk about the meat of the cool stuff you've brought to the table. Unless there's some other cool shit you want to talk about before we get there. I mean, we talk about Soul Calibur later, I'm sure, but I am curious about HitBox, because if you were to ask me, the dullard, how I've seen HitBox's trajectory even over the last 2 years is that I want to say it was a little bit before Evo, and then at Evo it kind of hit its stride, and it's kind of everywhere, and it just shot up in terms of, like, I heard it all across the board, people being like, I can't get my orders fulfilled because we can't make them fast enough. So I've only heard good things about HitBox ever since Evo this last year.
The nail on the head. That was our view internally as well. Evo 2018 was nuts in a sense. Both of my bosses, so to speak, were thinking, oh, we have so-and-so number of units, we'll never sell out. And I said at the beginning of the weekend, you guys are nuts if you think you're not going to sell out.
They
even before the weekend was
undersold.
It was
they
crazy.
Pulled a Nintendo, basically.
We sold out to the point where we ran out the online stock that we were reserving. Because we didn't want to be out of stock after Evo. We ended up having to, because otherwise we'd be there with a booth with a full day of nothing. So it really didn't make sense. But yeah, the trajectory for HitBox has been kind of on the rise since Evo. I can definitely see that, definitely appreciate that. And that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing now. So let me... and
I think that makes sense. I mean, I've seen... Because what you typically see is stick manufacturers like Hori or Kamba, just they'll sponsor teams that, and like under that umbrella, it'll be like a portion of the team will be sponsored by HitBox or like not HitBox, but like Hori, HyperX, Astro headsets or whatever. But it's like an amalgamation of people who make accessories for fighting games and stuff like that.
Right.
But I mean, you used to see this with Mad Catz, and I guess you still do, even though Mad Catz is, because they're like coming back, but mostly with PC stuff. So I think it makes sense to just cut out that middle and say, well, here we are. We have the ability to sponsor players in some capacity who use our product, and that's the best way to get your product out there, or at least get eyeballs on it. And as far as I'm concerned, so now you're just doing that. You're just committing to that, really.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned it like that, because we're not knocking the old model of sponsoring teams, right? Because it's a quick way to get it with top players. I think of Echo Fox, of course. I think of UIU, of course. I think of and other up-and-coming teams along those radar, like Coalition Gaming, stuff like that. That makes sense. But for us, teams typically have high-level, very players. Been with FTC 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 plus years, right? Those people play on stick more often than not.
As is typical.
As is typical, and I can't blame them, because that's where they've been. Asking them to change to HitBox is like asking them to change their hands. It really doesn't make sense for them. It doesn't make business sense for them. It doesn't make business sense for us to force anyone to switch. The only exception to that would be Clockwork. Shoutouts to Clockwork, by the way.
Oh, really?
Where he was... Yeah, he was a Marvel 2 veteran, played stick for the longest time. At the end, he decided to switch to Hitbox and never looked back. But that's a unicorn. For my intense purposes, Clockwork's a unicorn. He's just amazing. But for the rest of us plebeians of the world, really, we can't do that. So this kind of thing we're doing, the new and upcoming players, the ones that aren't picked up by teams yet, the ones that are looking very, very hungry to get picked up by teams, but they just don't have the means to travel to these events. They don't have the knowledge of what sponsors are looking for, or are just looking to get better. Right. That's what this program is all about.
Yeah, and I kind of, from what our Street Fighter does, I'm totally behind that, because you're basically setting players up to. And I'm not saying that this is like going to cut. It's not to like cut you out of it, because that's not really the case. Because if they were to be picked up by other sponsored teams, it's that they're still using a hitbox. It'll still be out there. Like, that's a win for you if they get picked up by, say, like an Echo Fox or a UIU, because then it's like, well, they still do the thing that we would have been doing anyway. But for you, it's that you're doing that little bit of investment towards players who might need it. We do a similar thing like at our Street Fighter we're doing that for Canada Cup currently with Mono and Marine, where it's just they have two totally different situations where they just need that little extra bit of money to travel to more events, gain that experience to then bring more eyeballs to them in terms of sponsorships, maybe set them up to earn money themselves in the fighting game community. So that's really what HitBox, or at least that's what it sounds like HitBox is planning on doing, and really upping their game in the next year or so. Your 2019 might be pretty stacked.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of the challenge now, isn't it? But mad respect, by the way, for you guys doing what you're sending players to Canada Cup. I know that's not cheap, especially Mono PR. Like, where are you sending it from? That's definitely not cheap. So good, fantastic job on that.
Hey, that's the community. What we do is just arbitrate all that stuff. It's really the community who steps up and gets that done. We just provide a platform to make it happen.
Oh, that's great.
That's so what but we've had the last two shows talking about them and building them up. Let's not build them up anymore. Fuck them. Fuck those two players. I want to talk about the hot
Here I have tried to be nice, right? Okay, fine.
I know.
Let me let me dive
I'll
a
let
little bit.
no one build me up on this show. No one.
Fine, Joe. I submit. Let me then dive deeper into what the specifics are, because I think players are looking more for that info, right?
Right.
So the way we're calling this is not actually a sponsorship. Whenever I write it out, I actually add air quotes because it's not.
Right.
We are not a long-term sponsor. We do not have the resources that Quanva would have, Razer would have, or anything like that, where we can like set up yearly contracts for every single player indefinitely. But what you said, allowing players to find teams, right? Or allowing players to find orgs that they might join up to. That's definitely our intent, and we'll support them to the end until they get there. There's no contracts, and how we deal with it is that 2 months before an event, we talk to the player and say, hey, are you interested in going to this? You say yes. We kind of agree on, okay, here's what I'd like you to do for us. Like, for example, I'd like you to stream once a week with a camera over your HitBox, saying that you're training for Canada Cup. That's what I had with Zombu, for example. With Coup d'etat, we had the same thing, and he got picked up by Coalition Gaming under this model, which is fantastic.
That's the perfect model. Then that's the success story that you wanted to. That's exactly what you want to do.
So we decided to pick him up and to say, okay, we'll send you to SCR. You get picked up by SCR, or at SCR, and then that was that. So we pay for the hotel, flight, reg, everything that a sponsor should be doing, in my opinion. And we also provide them, for example, if they don't have a hand camera for the stream to highlight their hitbox, we send them that. If they need some t-shirts, merch, like the carrying case that was brought around SCR, we hook them up with that. And that is related to the event itself. That's pretty much it. Now, levels in terms of the sponsorships as well. Right now, Zombu is probably somewhere in between. We'll send him anywhere versus we can't send him to Japan. Right. And this is just based on like performance, but start off with, or my intent is to start off people with saying, hey, look, I've been streaming a while. I'm looking to step up my game. I'm going to say, okay, let me hook you up with some locals or regionals, for example. Right. If you live in Canada, for example, if you literally live in Toronto, I would consider Canada Cup a regional for you, even though it's technically a major. We pay for their fees and see if they do it and see if they keep up streaming, because I want people who are hungry. HB to your name doesn't mean that you should stop the hustle. That's not the point of this. Right. HB is not the end destination. It's the road. And then we move them up. So, for example, again, going back to Zombu, most recent example, he got, I think, 30. He got 9th at SCR for DBFC, and he got 4th or 3rd, both of which were very relevant games for us to be visible in.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, let's send you to Canada Cup. So that's where he is right now.
That's awesome.
And then there was a time where Clockwork was more under us, and a time where Marvel 3 was in its heyday. We were close to sending him to Japan, and that's pretty much as far as we'll go.
Ah, man. Clockwork in Japan. It still blows my mind that he switched over to Hitbox. That's kind of nuts.
You'll have to ask him how he switched, but that's nuts for me. Like 10-year-old veteran of the game, famous for MVC2, and suddenly switches. That's crazy.
All that muscle memory just out the window, which I guess is more of a. So if you think about it, that's actually not that crazy. That it's like anyone switching from like a pad to a stick or anything. Maybe not that. It's probably not the same as that, because there's so much learned muscle memory with like wave dashing and triangle jumping, specifically in Marvel, that like is very learned muscle memory. So like what it must take to unlearn all of that is kind of crazy to me.
Definitely. We argue that it's easier, right? Or at least that's part of the pitch. Between you and me and RSF, it's not easier, it's different.
Right.
arguably is objectively easier because you're just pressing the back button and the down button and then pressing dash over and over and over again.
Yeah, I could
Technically,
listen
I
to
get
someone pitch like, well, if you want to block, you can just in walk forward block, you just switch fingers. It's an immediate from forward to backwards instead of having to move the stick from the forward to backward position. I'm a scientist, so I know that when you're moving a stick from one position to another takes longer than to just press a button. If your hand's over it, that's just science.
Well, yes. And that's actually Justin's pitch. Like I loaned him a hitbox. I think during Texas Showdown, I had 2 hitboxes with me. Mm-hmm. We played the set. We were both playing hitboxes. He still kicks my ass, by the way. Mm-hmm. 3-0, Karen. And K-Brad walks over and says, Justin, what's this? Are you playing hitbox right now? And he said, I would play it only for Street Fighter just because I can walk forward and block almost immediately.
Yeah. Which is like, we'll get into that later, but as a Zangief main, playing that game online is the fucking bane of my existence. Walk forward and block. I've walked into so many fireballs in that game that I could pay rent with all the fireballs I've eaten. Damn, man, it's crazy to me. Luckily, they're going to tune back the struggle. Yeah, the struggle has certainly been real. Luckily, they'll be turning down the input latency, but we'll talk about all that later, of course. But I kind of cut you off from your final pitch with what HitBox is doing, because you're setting yourself up as this really good stepping stone. You're not even calling yourselves sponsors, really, like in the loosest sense of the term, because you want companies to be able to approach your players. You don't want to have a lock on them. You know, it's different.
Yes, we definitely do not want to have a lock on them, because these players, typically if we pick someone up, one of the questions I ask is, where do you see yourself going? Like, they actually want to make like a semi-career out of this. Mm-hmm. And the answer has to be yes, and I have to see it, not just hear it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have that hustle, you have that drive to stream every day, despite having a 9 to 5, despite working 2 jobs, then that goes a long way in my book.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Let me get to the point. So we set ourselves up to be like, we're not even keeping these players, right? But
right.
From my end, I want to also make my intent known, because there has to be a but here somewhere, right? And rather than people try to theorize what that but is, I'll say it. We have, for each and every one of our players that we pick up on this program, so to speak, is that if and when they get picked up by a team, mm-hmm. have a hand in the negotiation to say that regardless of what, during their tenure with the team that they're about to join, to mm-hmm. play on a HitBox made HitBox.
Right.
Like, they have to play on a HitBox product. Barring that, should they have like competitive teams sponsoring them, and we don't want to get in the way with that, that's fine, as long as the hitbox that they are playing on is made by us.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it doesn't have the hitbox logo on it, but it has to be made by us. And it's more of a pride thing for the owners more than anything else in that regard.
Yeah, because that's like the thing that got them to that position in the first place. That makes sense. That could probably get a little complicated in terms of contractual deals, but I can understand that, at least. That makes sense.
And we hope to work enough with players, and we hope that our player base would be committed to the hitbox, where like the natural reaction would say, duh, I'm not going to switch out, you know? We hope to get to that point, but I make it very upfront and clear, because otherwise it's not even a money thing, honestly. There's, as you know, and as other people have probably mentioned on the show already, there's not a lot of money in the FGC when you compare it to other esports titles. So for us, it's a matter of our brand. Mm-hmm. Like, the creators of this work their butts off in making this. So they want to see mm-hmm. winning on this thing, ultimately, people kicking ass on this thing, ultimately. So, and it has to be their creation.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I've been thinking about, it's one of these things, and I know I told you this before, but I've been thinking about getting a hitbox on my own, and then running a review of the Hitbox, but just spend like the first 40 minutes of it just dunking on you. Like,
sounds good.
reviewing old tapes of your past matches in the weekly, just being like, yeah, he did this on his Hitbox when what he should have done was this, and something along those lines. But right. I haven't quite put the energy into it yet. But in my mind, that would be the ideal situation. How I jest, but I am curious about using a Hitbox specifically for Zangief. Because what I've heard a lot of people's worries is, it seems like a 360 is difficult to do, but from what I've seen, there's videos out there showing, well, it's actually quite easy. And in fact, you can do it almost immediately, like instantaneously, if you use like the right 360 technique or 720 technique. And that interests me. And specifically the fact that walking back and forth, I would just have to piano my hands left and right in a half circle fashion, and then at any point just hit the thumb button and then light punch, and then boom, your SPD's right there. I want to have that access in the neutral. That sounds good to me.
It is good. I've done it before, and it's very satisfying.
Yeah, because didn't you do a 360 tutorial video, or am I thinking of another tutorial video? There's a couple out there.
Yeah, and woefully not updated, unfortunately. Part of my stuff that I'm going to be doing between now and December is updating everything that we have to Street Fighter V. But yes, one of our co-founders, Dustin, was the one who made that video.
Oh, okay.
Using Ultra. Yeah. So the technique still applies, by the way. Same technique, but just different slightly. Let me get into specifics since this is RSF.
Yeah.
In 4, there's more jump frames, around 6 jump frames. In 5, there's only about 4 or 5, depending on the character, which means that the 720, standing 720 is almost impossible compared to 4. Standing 360 is totally fine. Stand, walk, back, forth, 360 all you want. 720, you're going to need a buffer, whether that's jump, whether that's dash, whether that's even punch, like anything to just give a little bit of leeway. But yeah,
in my experience, just walking 720s aren't really useful in Street Fighter V. You can, anytime you would actually want to use a standing 720, you'd buffer it anyway.
You buffer it around behind something.
Yeah,
but
there's almost no reason to use it just standing or like on someone's wake up. At least
unless
like
you're
in Street
in
Fighter V, that doesn't make sense to me at least. But
in that situation where that video of Urian doing tackle and then the Zangief player reacted with a standing 720, unless you're in that specific situation.
He buffered it with the crouching light kick. It was a combo.
Oh, was it a crouching light kick?
Yeah, it was a crouching light kick.
There you go.
I didn't miss that. My eyes did not deceive. Very easy to do. But no, like I don't know. At least that's in 5. And some people have said, well, it would be easier in 4, to which I'm like, well, with Geef and T-Hawk, yeah, maybe. But like specifically with Hugo, it's actually a little bit more difficult because of the input requirements, specifically with his meat squasher, where you need to do 2 different up inputs instead of the typical 1 up input because of the overlap with the ultra throw. But that's highly specific Hugo stuff that I don't know. I don't know. Would I play Hugo on a Hitbox? I don't know if that would be any different or I don't know. I haven't tried it out yet, so I'm only speaking from conjecture. I can't even speak to it intelligently.
I think the only qualified person on the planet that would be able to answer that question is Mike Ross.
Yeah, maybe.
Because he is playing on a Hitbox and he is a Hugo main. Ergo, he didn't play on a Hitbox when he was playing Hugo. Disclaimer. And also, another disclaimer: we're not affiliated with him in any sort of way. He's just we were just as surprised as everyone else when he decided to pick it up. But God, doing well on it on Guilty Gear.
Yeah, he did quite well at Evo even. No, that's rad. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he uses a hitbox now. That's, man. I really should get one, shouldn't I? Are you guys filling orders yet? Are you back in stock?
Okay, I think your readers, listeners slash viewers would actually want this info too. Yes, as of this recording, 10/18, we are going to be in stock within days of this recording. The shipment is in the United States. We are just waiting for it to hit Vegas.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Where do you go for that? If I were to just type HitBox
HitBoxarcade.com
into Google. Okay, if I just type in, oh, this is the first one. But I guess that's because Google probably is leading me to exactly where I want to go. But Hitbox Arcade is the website, and yeah, you are fulfilling orders. Do you do custom faceplates? Out of curiosity?
No, not at this point in time. No.
Okay. Let me kind of ask you this then, while I have you, in terms of, because you know how people are getting buck wild with security and making people open up their sticks, because security theater is at an all-time high. Are they easy to open up and get into?
Yes. Not as easy as probably like I might be getting sticks confused here, like the Rap 4 or the Dragon, where it literally pops the hood. We do not have that yet. However, I did bring up the security issues with the guys as soon as SER 2018 happened. Mm-hmm. We will be considering that moving forward. Right now, the way to open it is from the bottom, and it's essentially just screws and rubber feet, as we call it, which are just screw-ons.
Right.
So as long as you have that small screwdriver with you, you can open up your box at any time. That's still not as convenient as we want it to be, but we're adjusting for sure. We've heard that feedback a mile away.
Yeah, and like that's fine. And honestly, at least in my opinion, personally, I don't care, because I guess I like a sturdy object. Well, I have a Rat 4 and a couple other sticks, obviously, but you only got to undo one screw to get on the inside. But like holding that thing and like I can shake the shit out of it and not worry about things exploding. Everything's packed tight on the inside. I know that it's all good, but I don't know. I guess I just have no desire to like pop the top and maybe like hide drugs in there. Although we're not going to Canada Cup, so who knows?
I mean
Toronto, man. This episode is recorded a day after marijuana is made legal in Canada. So,
oh my goodness,
congratulations, you've won the war on drugs.
Yep, congrats. I'll be interested in what like Toronto will actually be like.
Knowing the people who I know in the FGC, and specifically kind of the people who I know from even Toronto, it's going to get legal up there. It's going to get legal.
We might be playing Blaze Green.
Yeah,
honestly, we might be playing Blaze Green.
Yes, I'm going to be doing standing 420s like nobody's business. Actually, no, I get drug tested all the time, so I don't do drugs. Stay in school, kids. But that, I don't know. That is, I don't know. Do you have? Is there a compartment for cables? What's the cable sitch?
So the latest model, which is shipping, we got a partial shipment the other week, and then the ones that are coming in now are detachable cables.
Okay.
That has been a feedback ever since I think NCR, where cable strength was an issue.
Yeah.
A small issue, but still an issue with several players. We took it to heart and said, okay, let's improve this cable. At that time, we saw like this kind of trend. Okay, why don't we try detachable cables? They tried it, they liked it, and now every hitbox moving forward will be coming with a detachable cable.
Cool. I don't know, that to me provides like a really, and I'm not just like saying this because like we've known each other for so long. I actually do think that the latest version is pretty sleek stick. I guess I can't really call it a stick anymore. You just have to call it a hitbox.
I'm used to it. Don't worry.
Unfortunately, I'm sure you've had this conversation with like tens of thousands of people, I'm sure. But I like the minimalist design. There's something about that that I like. It reminds me of the old 8-arcs, like the all white 8-arcs from a couple years back, which they probably still make those, but it would be. It's a nice design, and I'm not just saying that again. I think it looks cool, but
I definitely still take it as a compliment. If the guys were here, they would take it as an absolute compliment. We've been kind of pursuing this Apple-like aesthetic for a while now, where it's just a bunch of white, bunch of empty space.
Oh, so you guys are in the dongle business? I mean, I guess you are with the detachable cables.
Right now, I guess, yeah, we're heading there. But yeah, no, we've been after that kind of design philosophy for quite a bit. Yeah.
No, that's cool. Very good. All right, so before we get into other Street Fighter related topics, is there anything else that you have going on that you want to pitch? What do you want to pitch to the people while you have the mic? The air is yours.
So for Street Fighter players in particular, please know that we want a Hitbox Street Fighter player. I've been scouting pretty heavy.
I mean,
for a Hitbox
can
Street Fighter player.
I mean, Mike, as a Zangief main to another Zangief man, I think Mike Too Strong is looking to pick up Hitbox, and I'm sure you've talked to him before.
I have.
Or at least know of him. He's a very good dude, and he's in my opinion, and I think even mathematically, might be the strongest Zangief main right now in Street Fighter. So maybe after Capcom Cup, where they accidentally buff Geef too much and he becomes OP again. That's the thing about Geef buffs. I've said this numerous times, but he's really hard to balance because any little extra buff would make him like kind of too strong.
It's command grab a frame faster, and as he suddenly becomes OP.
One frame, even one frame that would be bananas. If they made it one frame faster, they'd have to but that's the thing though. They'd have to change up some of the frame data. So maybe like offensively wise, he wouldn't be as good. I don't know. It's tough. He's tough. He's a tough character to balance.
I agree fully. But back to the subject of Mike. Yes.
Right.
I think after earlier this morning, I even saw a tweet from him, which then allows me to say this. Fault of anyone currently in the FGC, we are not interested in people that currently do not play on a Hitbox for this specific program. Simply because we've been burned by it before.
Right.
Hitbox was up and coming. I'll actually tell the little anecdote.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were sponsoring players to just try it because that was the fastest way, right? Or one would imagine that was the fastest way to get hitboxes. And what we found, unfortunately, was that people were just doing it really to travel, and then whenever they got the chance, they would just play on the stick. That was literally when they were starting out, but it left such a bad impression on them that they really don't want to. For me personally, I need people who are hungry and playing on a hitbox. It's an and, not an or.
Right.
So, like if you have committed enough to the Switch, which again I think is akin to switching to a hand, really, and you are making results, or at the very least are hungry, you're always putting yourself out there, trying to get noticed by sponsors, and you're playing on a hitbox, we should definitely talk, and at the very least we'll help you on your way.
And I guess to that point, where would be the best for people to reach out and do that?
So no, DMing me is not the best way to do it.
You don't want people to slide into DMs?
No.
Glad honestly, we got that out of the way, because that's what I would have done. I've been listening.
No, well, yes, and
be sliding right into those DMs,
and people would be right. Okay, here's what I'll say. The importance of resumes in other conversations, right? Mm-hmm. Where if you're pitching yourself to someone, make it a dang good pitch. So if you are going to be sliding on the DMs, or if you are going to be sliding, make sure it counts. That you have something ready. It's not just, oh, send me to Canada Cup because LOL, LMAO, right?
Right.
That's not gonna go anywhere. That's what I meant about not making a joke out of it.
No, that's smart, because I think that this we didn't have this slate as a topic, but I think is important to talk about. But specifically within the FGC, there's so much unprofessionalism. And granted, like I say this as someone who completely contributes to that, who's like shit posting from the RSF Twitter account, but also it's Reddit, it's fucking R Street Fighter,
Yeah.
it's this house was built on memes, okay, not hard work and dedication. It's memes all the way down, folks.
Got you. Got you.
So
and like we're grassroots FGC, like HitBox. Here's our one competitive advantage, if you can even call it that. We have been FGC since we started.
right.
There has not been an inkling of going into any other genre because we are an FGC bred company. You understand
there's no first person shooter hitbox in the making. So
No.
trying to tell me.
I know. So long story short, like we've been FGC for a while and we know like the kind of grassroots culture, like this swearing, all that. Like we don't even consider swearing unprofessional, like maybe other esports teams would.
Right.
But a sponsorship at its core is your ability to sell X.
Right.
It's your ability to sell that you can win on a hitbox. And you have to carry yourself with a modicum of respect where you say, I am worthy of representing your product and here's why.
Yeah. You have to give a fuck. You
Exactly.
have to actually give a fuck. Right?
Yeah.
Like
Accurate thing. If you're sliding into the DMs, you have to give an F.
or like, because the best thing to me is like just send an email. Like you put this earlier, and I think this was the best way to say it, but like make a resume. Like it is actually probably not that hard to make an FGC related resume. Like if you open up Google Docs, the one that's on the online, there's a resume template right there. You can tweak that for the FGC. You can make a FGC template, something that shows past history or what you're currently doing, something that sets goals for the future. Like that's easy to write in. Contact information, all that shit.
We help our players with that. I've been intending to offer it as a service to the FGC public for a while now. At the very least, been toying with the idea. But for our players, that comes with the territory.
Yeah.
If you do not have a resume yet, we will help you create one.
I totally understand that and am totally for it. This is like with like our Street Fighter sponsorships. I was giving the credit advice to one of the players just the other weekend of like how to build your credit score, which is not related to FGC, but like is also very important if you want to like get a loan or buy a house or buy a car. That shit's important. And that I don't know, that comes with it as a part of like taking care of players and making
yeah.
Just making sure that like they're okay, because if they do okay and they're all set up to succeed, then that's what you want as a quote unquote sponsor. That helps you out in the end. And it just generally helps out the FGC.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, I feel like that's important because I consider I empathize with that as someone who is a quote unquote sponsor. Like, I get it.
Cool. No, that you totally hit the proverbial nails on the head. The one other thing I want to mention before we completely leave this topic, streamers. We published this with other content creators already. We published this news, but then the question of streamers came up. We definitely, absolutely 100% want to work with streamers and other content creators. We have not been able to figure out a model that works 100%.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he'll mind me saying this. Automatic, for example, right?
Yeah.
He can compete. He can compete with the best of them, but he's primarily on Twitch, right? So while it is beneficial, I don't want to mess with his revenue ability to generate revenue or make a living by sending him to events where he's not in front of Twitch. And go hand in hand.
He has a whole community on Twitch. That's where he's that makes total sense for him.
Exactly. So I want to work with people like him because I think he's one of the best in representing himself.
Yeah,
not even
he is very good at that. If you want to give that dude praise, all you want on this show.
He's amazing. Can produce tech, valuable member of the community. But like his ability to put on the food on his table and keep the lights on, we do not want to mess with that.
Right.
So long story short, that's my cordial way of saying we're working on it, on how to develop this program
right
for streamers and content creators.
Yeah, it would need to be tweaked in some way for that to work. But I imagine something along the lines of making sure that there's a hand cam on or something along those. I don't know.
But what benefit working with us gives them, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's
like, what more can you do with or for them?
Pretty much. And what's their end goal?
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys will work that out at some point in the future, but it is something that you are thinking about, which is good. All right, no, that's cool. So I guess a side topic before we get into Street Fighter stuff, because I know we can talk about Street Fighter stuff, that's fine, but something that is close and near and dear to your heart, but Soul Calibur 6 is coming out. Like,
yes,
some people have it already.
I have it. Steam just released it. It's fun.
Yeah. Give me the elevator pitch on Soul Calibur. Or do you have prepared statements on the latest and greatest fighting game that's out today?
Got you. All right.
How's the jiggle physics?
There, like, if you're about that, it is there. Okay. So here's what I'll say. And I actually ran a poll on Twitter saying, like, okay, I want like new generation FGC to be playing this game. Like, what do you want me to cover? And I think one person commented, transition from 2D to 3D is probably one of the most difficult.
Yeah, movement's totally different.
Different. There's a completely different axis for footsies, right? Which might deter people from wanting to learn the game. Soul Calibur 6, specifically that iteration of this game, most beginner-friendly 3D fighting game to date.
Really? And why is that? What makes it easier than, say, a Tekken 7?
Right. Tekken 7 is already the easiest Tekken ever, right?
Yeah.
But
which is to say, still very hard because movement is extremely specific in that game.
Difficult.
Yeah.
But for Soul Calibur 6, they matched, without going too specific, they matched the movement of Soul Calibur 2, which was regarded to be the fastest in the game. It's not as fast, but it's faster. Probably like SC2, SC6 would be the order. So like there's a lot more freedom of movement. You don't have to like duck back just to do a dash back. Right. You know what I'm saying? And you can step towards the screen and away from the screen all over the place. More importantly, a lot of the input has been like dumbed down because that's not right. It's more, a lot of the input has been made linear to the point where if you want to do a combo and if you notate it down that combo, there's not going to be like crazy 5. So for example, Hadouken then neutral input. It's just Hadouken input. Or like,
wow, that actually is way easier then. Because that to me is like the thing about switching from 2D to 3D games that a lot of people who play 2D games get really hung up on because they're not used to putting the stick to neutral.
Exactly. So there's a lot less of that, if not completely gone. I haven't gone through the entire character list yet.
Right.
But I will say this, for Ivy, for example, she's very notoriously actually 2 command grabs where the input is just insane. It's like down, forward, up, back, forward, down, back, which is an absolutely insane input.
Mm-hmm.
The game itself, and this was hilarious, I posted this on Twitter. The game itself says, don't need that command grab to win. Number 2, if you were to just spin your stick 3 times, that you would get it. And it is right. If you just did like 360s and ended in the right direction, you will still get the command grab. And the leniency is like, I can input the command from one end of the screen, run
Tony
up
Hawk.
to your face, and grab you. It's ridiculous how lenient that is now. So they made this so beginner friendly, but still very competitive at the highest level. That's my elevator pitch on why you should try Soul Calibur 6.
What? Let me ask you this: as someone who's interested in game tutorials, how does it come across when it says you don't need this to win? Because that's actually that's a very interesting way of like expressing your game. Actually, I think that other fighting games could totally benefit from that, because a lot of people, when they learn fighting games or try to learn fighting games in a vacuum, they get super hyper focused on like learning like touch of death combos or like the most optimized shit, when really you don't need to learn that at all. I made a comment the other day, like the lab monster dies in the lab trying to find the most advanced combo, the most optimized combo, without ever considering what it takes to land that first hit, which is hyper true. But that's how does it say in the game that you don't need it?
I think that entire clause for Ivy specifically was written by someone who is a member of the FGC, or is familiar with fighting games, I should say, but also has the directive of make this as beginner friendly as possible. Because it was written in a way where it was like, you could learn this. It is a very valuable move. It's one of the 2 most powerful throws in the game. You can win without it. She has plenty of tools, and people have complained about it. She has plenty of tools that can win, that can earn her the W without those 2.
Ivy too strong. Okay.
Like the number of people who have said nerf Ivy on my Twitter during the past 2 weeks has been insane.
Oh, I should learn Ivy then. But yeah, my boy Asteraf, though.
Have you seen his half screen ring out? Oh my god.
That's like that's what I think. But because he's so long range, but like deals such good damage. I love him. Like so much. You whiff a 2 AA on him, which is just essentially 2 horizontal strikes that are high. If you whiff again him and then he charges up to you, you are hitting half-life damage. That combo has already been posted. Beautiful.
That's nuts to me.
I love it. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. That's why I love him. I love my boy for it. No, that's cool. All right. So you're excited for Soul Calibur 6. You think you're so far enjoying it. Is it still too early to say what the online is like?
I haven't tried it.
Okay.
I know the beta was really good. The only bad part really was that it took too long to connect. I don't know if they were able to fix that between now and the release.
Yeah, it's still it's super early to be talking about, how the online component is. At least in my opinion, you need to get you need a lot of experience for that. You need a lot of inputs. What's the word? What's the scientific method for it? It's like you need a big pool of
the big data.
Yeah, we need big data. We need big data on how the netcode is before we get into it. Which speaking of data, I should ask Weed how the input latency is.
Oh yeah, that I was about to mention it. That's probably its biggest criticism right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true this is, but the on PS4 specifically over the PC version is very similar to the launch of Street Fighter V Vanilla.
Okay.
Where it was really horrible at launch.
Well, I mean,
to Tekken 7 on PS4 specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not great. That's not great.
Yeah, it's not great.
I'll look forward to whatever Weed has to post on his timeline, or because he'll run that test on it, which he can do pretty quickly. I just don't know if he has the game yet.
Silver lining though is that this happened with Tekken 7 as well, where Tekken 7 launched with a lot of input latency, and they were able to patch it out.
Yeah, they're actually talking about patching it again, aren't they? I thought that I saw.
No, for
recently.
Tekken 7 specifically, I don't know, but when they did patch it, what they did was mess with the Unreal Engine to make sure that it worked well with UE4. So they might just do the same to this and it'll be solved. But for right now, that's the game's biggest criticism competitively.
Okay. And speaking of input latency, I think that's a good transition to talk about Street Fighter V input latency. What's your hope for what they bring it down to? That's coming up on the 23rd. So we're like 5 days out at this point.
That's I will say this, like that piece of news because I competitively for Street Fighter I was planning to take it to backseat for in favor of Soul Calibur 6. Soul Calibur 6 I'm planning to heavy compete on. But the news that single-handedly said, well, maybe not quite. Because I'm hopeful about that news. I'm really hopeful.
Yeah, I'm so interested of what'll it be? What are they lowering it to?
Yeah, I know.
What are they squeezing?
I believe the latest is on PC. It was 6.5 out of the box, right?
Well, we did a whole podcast on that when I had Weed on, and he talked about what the current input latency is, and it wavers between like upper end of 4.5 to about 7, depending on what time it is. It's on like a 60-second timer where it goes from that upper end of 4.5 to like 7, and then resets back to 4.5 at when the clock rolls over. So on PC, I think it's locked at that 5-ish input lag, which is fine. But on PS4, it gets really wonky. And if you don't know what if listener, you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a whole episode of that. Forget what number it is, but it's when I had Weed on, so look for that episode. If you want the very long breakdown, we talk about it for like a whole fucking hour about the entire method of what he did to even get it, which I'm sure he'll do this method for Soul Calibur 6, and I'm sure he'll do for Street Fighter V here in a couple days to see what it is. Because if they remove that, I think that would be super good for the game. Or if
absolutely.
If it gets down to like 4, if they just lock it at 4, that would be really good.
Yeah, I think the PS4 users will take anything at this point.
Yeah.
Because for them, the primary complaint that I always hear is that playing from PC to PS4 is just literally playing underwater.
Yeah.
For them. So
it was tough. When I made the switch, I was like, no, damn, that doesn't feel good. I don't feel good at all.
Yeah, that's probably like the number one priority. If PS4 can even match what PC is right now, we'd be in a much better spot.
I think so too. However, what I'll say to that is I think there's a caveat with that, in that I feel like some buttons are not great, like just to be whiff punished. I said this the other day, and this is not the only normal that's like this, but I think it's the most egregious. Abigail's stand hard punch.
Oh yeah.
Granted, it has long startup. I get it. Like you can jump in on it. Like you have like 18, 20 frames before it even becomes active. But once it becomes active, it's a big old hitbox. It's way out there. It's very far reaching, and it'll get a crumple on crush counter and stays active. But then once that last active frame is done, it only has 5 frames. 5 frames where that hurt box is still out there. So you think of that window of, yes, you have some time to prepare for where that hitbox is going to be. And this is just not V-trigger considered, because then it's like, well, he could charge it and throw off your timing a little bit, and you'll get fucked for that. All of that out the window. Just raw stand hard punch, no V-trigger. It's out there. Boom. Active. Hitbox goes away, but the hurt box is only for 5 frames. So your active window of like too early, you get crush countered because of that active hitbox. Too late, you whiff entirely. Even though it looks like your hand or your foot is going through his big ass fist, because his hurt box is gone at that point. And that to me is the most egregious one. There are other normals like it, but
I was about to say Bison standing medium kick is also notoriously.
Yeah, that's another one it's out there, and then your fist can just right through it.
It's gone. Like I was sitting across Dr. African and another Karen player. Where Dr. African was just pressing standing medium kick over and over and over again, and the other player was trying to whip punish it. He said, and I quote, "I'm gonna hit you more. I'm gonna hit you more, no matter what you do." I'm whiff punishing this because you will never whiff punish it. And he whiff punished it once after throwing it like 30 times. Yeah. He got one whiff punish, and that was it.
Because the hurt box just disappears. They don't stay out there long enough for you to throw a button into it. And that's just another example. I feel like Colleen's stand hard punch is somewhat similar to that as well.
Standing light kick, try to whiff punish that, 5 frame active, and then gone for after 3-4 frames or something like that. That's nuts. What they needed to lower it down to. In a dream scenario where we would get everything that we want, I would say faster than a 4-frame jab. So if we got anything between 3 to 4, I think that would fundamentally change the game. I'm not saying it will be better. It'll be better. I'm not saying it's objectively better, but for us to notice the change, I think if the input lag was lower than a jab,
wow,
we would see some fundamental gameplay changes,
which would be significant. That's a significant decrease. Specifically looking at what like Weed has posted for other games, like sub 3, there's not a lot of games on that sub 3 list, or even on that 3 frame list. That's because that's low. That's pretty low input latency, considering.
Very low. Very, very low. Like that would be pretty as close to a true test of skill as we can get, where lag is not an issue.
Well, with that in mind, though, you brought up, because I think that I don't know, when we talk about what the input lag could be, and if it, like you said, it would change the game, to which I think that a significant balance patch would need to be done. I think a lot of characters' game plans would essentially change at that point.
Or even player philosophy.
Yeah.
I can think of Rob TV posting, and this is coincidence, but I think conspiracy theory, Rob TV might have influenced some things here. Rob TV said he got either top 8 or 1 at some event.
Yeah.
And timing his jumps.
I think that was... Oh, no, it was the UIU, the Gobble Gauntlet.
Yeah, the Canadian Thanksgiving Gauntlet. Yeah.
Yeah.
That he got placed high or won that event
by
jumping.
Event.
Oh, good job.
It was an online event, and he was playing like a nutcase. It was bananas. And then afterwards, he had made that tweet that was like, yeah, I just played like a nut, and I got second.
Here's the thing, though. He said, and I quote, he said... he played Street Fighter V, and he mentioned input lag as one of those factors. A week later, Capcom announces that they were reducing input lag, and I'm like, was there a motive here to not let Rob TV win? And I'm like,
the man's trying to put Rob TV down.
The Illuminati agenda of Capcom, I don't know at this point, but I'm like, that timing is just way too good.
That's pretty funny. Rob TV, he's a good dude. Good dude. You also brought up Dr. African, great guy. I think I've told a story about him. Oh, wait, no. Never mind. I'm thinking of a different thing. He was just standing there when this other thing happened. So that's why I had that in my mind. Never mind. I'll allude to that and maybe tell that story later. But that's a story about...
Sure, he'd love to hear it.
Well, it's a story about Tourniquet and Blizzard. But that's an aside. And he just happened to be around. Good dude, though. Do you want to pitch your community at all? Like your local scene?
Yeah. Community, Dallas community right now, DFW is still thriving for under the quote unquote esports banner.
Mm-hmm.
I guess now's a good time to bring up the news that we talked about prior to the show. When Echo Fox announced that they were dropping people, by total coincidence, the day after, who you guys may know under Infinity Esports, you guys might know them for their Overwatch team even, decided that it would be essentially disbanding every single one. And that includes the FGC division. Dr. African, Toy, who plays Bison, is currently a leader in the online boards. And a bunch of up-and-coming Dallas players were affected. So that's actually part of it. Yeah, it by total coincidence after the Echo Fox announcement.
And what group was that again?
GGEA.
Yeah.
So they were sponsored. Now they're not. So if you guys are looking to pick up people, I would be looking at that roster because they're up and coming too. If any of them played on a HitBox, best believe I would be already.
You'd be sliding into the DMs professionally, of course.
100%. So there is that, but Dallas is still pretty thriving right now because the part of Infinity Esports that wasn't dropped, we're getting several pieces of news actually. Number one, we're opening up an esports stadium here in Arlington, and it's run by a person of KIT fame, with Panda.
Yeah.
You might have heard that name.
Not Panda Global, which people confuse him with sometimes. I've seen that.
Panda X Gaming.
Panda X Gaming, not Panda Global. Different Panda. Get it right, folks.
Yes. He's been a long time community. We've always loved working with KIT. They were one of the first tournament series we sponsored.
Yeah.
He's heading this project like a madman, trying to build this esports stadium by November.
Oh, word.
Yeah, so that's going to be sick. It's going to come up with a bunch of launch events for all kinds of esports titles, but since it's Panda, he's also sprinkling in a bunch of FGC in there.
That'll be sick. Man, that's awesome. Good for him. He's been at it for a very long time. Glad to see that really come to fruition then.
He's amazing. And then the other piece of news for Dallas is DreamHack Austin is now moving to DreamHack Dallas.
Oh, man.
Easy.
Crazy announcements. Things are blowing up in Texas. In Dallas, at least, I suppose.
I don't know why they would do it, but they see something in the city that I'm not. So that's fantastic news for us. We get to... I've been meaning to go to a DreamHack, and I've already been planning to go to DreamHack Atlanta just to check it out.
Yeah.
But man, DreamHack has always been on that radar. We're like, okay, they've been kind of tiptoeing into the FGC, throwing side tournaments here and there through Alex Jabela, of course. Shout outs to Alex.
Mm-hmm.
But I know they've been stepping it up, but especially with someone like Alex in the helm, that will only be accelerated even further. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Dallas over the next 12 months, really.
Yeah, no, that is super interesting. Wow, I don't know why they would move that to Dallas, though. That's kind of crazy. Texas has some good communities, though, too. Like Austin, Houston, and Dallas all have like really strong communities. And that's only the big three out there. I mean, there's definitely more.
Yep,
it's a big state. But okay, cool. So I think that basically covers, I think, what we had planned to talk about. I do want to slightly bring up one thing. I'll just direct people to go read this write-up because I think it would be beneficial. It's a write-up by True Knight, who has done a lot of great work in the community. He's written a lot of really good tutorials, just generally good dude for helping people out. And he wrote a write-up on how to improve your adaptation and pattern recognition speed. And it really digs into the mentality of what you should be looking at your opponent for, or what information you are getting from your opponent, which, I mean, specifically for newer players, that is the one hurdle that they tend to never think about, is what is your opponent trying to accomplish and how can you manipulate that in any way, or adapt to how they play. I mean, like, grand example is the Gandhi match by FSP Gandhi, right? No adaptation. He had FSP, skilled player, knows how to play, didn't play that matchup right. Totally got blown up for it. But so I'll link that in the show notes. Highly recommend go to read it. But that'll wrap up the show. Unless, Sora, there's anything that you would like to bring up in addition to what we've already talked about, or you would want to reiterate.
No, that's it. No, that's pretty much it. This has been a long episode. Thank you guys for having me, number one.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Honestly, it's been too long, and it's a good excuse for me to just talk to you for a while about just shooting the shit, because, I don't know, you've been around for so long that it's bound to happen at some point. So
I want to continue this at Canada, by the way.
Just definitely. Well, trust me, man. I've got a lot of people in Canada who have said that they owe me a beer, so I might be dead by the time you find me. Who knows? It should be a good time, but
the classic. Yeah. No,
don't worry. I'm a lovely drunk. Don't worry about it.
Fantastic. I wanted to say hi to you at Evo, but you were busy running around like hosting.
Well, I was going to bring up, like, at Evo, I showed up to your pools to say hi to you, and you weren't there. And I was fuck, he's not here.
I had a family thing. Long story short, but I had to attend to my brother. Mm-hmm. That's what caused that emergency. That was it.
Yeah, but everything ended up being okay, and I ended up seeing you later at the event near the HitBox booth, and I was like, damn, man, like, you guys putting in some fucking work. But yeah, long story short on that, and we'll pick this up in Tirana next weekend. A couple things before next weekend, though, is ECT is this weekend in New Jersey, Jam Festival in Brazil. Those are both ranking events. I'm sure there's going to be some fun stuff to watch. I know that there's a USF4 tournament happening at ECT.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's going to be streamed. I'm not sure. But I do know that there is one happening. And then, of course, Canada Cup is next week, which is the last. No, never mind.
Is it the last premiere?
No. There's the LATAM regional finals and the Red Bull Conquest ending in November.
Gotcha.
So,
gotcha.
Not the last technical premiere, but like the points are
getting pretty dang close.
It's getting thin. It's getting thin out there. People getting hungry, and it kind of shows. And a lot of people are traveling around. People are booking out the end of their year for leading up to Canada Cup. So it should all be good. But that's a show. But before we end, I can't let you leave without asking you the two questions that I ask every person who comes on this show. For the first time, I ask him a line of two questions. Two questions, related, of course. The first question being, what is your favorite normal attack in any fighting game? We've had a slew of answers, and I feel like there's, like, however people answer this question can tell a lot about their philosophy as a player.
You're absolutely right, and I will probably not come across as a very friendly person by saying what I'm about to say.
Okay.
It is Zero Standing H in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
So that's a big beefy button. That is a big beefy button right there.
Yep. Yep, it does so many wonderful things.
Especially when he's got the double out, he's got the twin.
And everything behind it, it's just ridiculous how good that move is. Yes,
Nah,
that is my
that's
favorite normal.
good point. Good normal. It's just it's very useful and it's oppressive. It's an oppressive button.
That's yeah, it's like no way out, and that's why I feel like it doesn't reflect well into what I want to say. But yeah, that's my favorite button.
Word. Okay. So which that leads into the next question, which is, what is your favorite combo in any fighting game?
Harder,
A little bit,
harder.
a little
Like I'm
bit more
tempted to say,
difficult.
yeah, I'm tempted to say lightning loop, but it's not. Um, probably.
Like when I answered this question, to me, is actually Sagat in Street Fighter 4. The forward light kick into crouching jab into DP. That specific string, to me, the cadence of it. I love the way it sounds when I do it. I love the way it feels when you hit that jab. It's that dunk, dunk, dunk into the cancel specifically. It's that cadence. I like the way it sounds. I like the way it
No,
feels. And it's brutal.
and you're right. Cadence is very important in having a favorite combo. I will give a two-part answer to this. I hope
That's
you don't
fine.
mind.
You can have multiple. By the way, I didn't say this, but you have multiple answers for this.
Well, the first one came to mind immediately. Here, I had to think about it.
Hmm.
So my my favorite number one favorite or favorite point one, I guess, combo to do
Favorite combo
a
A.
different for a different reason is Karen Tenko into um to Mujin Kyaku into EX Tenko into EX Orochi,
Mhm.
like the quote unquote hard combo.
Right.
For me, that combo is one of the most satisfying combos to do in Street Fighter. Still, even more than Menat stuff, and I've done Menat stuff.
Now,
Um,
why is that?
it is simple to the point and effective, but also still has that degree of difficulty I'm looking for.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's every hitbox player, but I like the stuff that I like doing on a hitbox takes execution to
Hmm.
some extent. It's not the hardest thing in the world. I don't typically go for the hardest.
Right.
But if it has that sort of, as you said, cadence, it's fine. Where it feels like I'm hitting you when an elbow in this attack, even though I'm just pressing buttons.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
feels.
Yeah, I
Um,
can feel that specifically with that combo too, because you don't really, you can't plink the activation of the command dash.
no.
You just have to know the timing.
All time you have the EX command dash. You can plank the Orochi after, but not the EX command dash. That's a manual time.
Mhm.
The favorite combo number two for a completely different reason. Is Infinite.
Which one is this?
Green Infinite, which is essentially people have dubbed it rocking the cradle, where I do her corner infinite screen and I switch sides every single rep rather than just keeping you in the corner. The reason why I like this combo is simply because of the memory of it.
I see.
Dante Virgil for the longest time for Ultimate Marvel. In its last year, I decided to switch to what is on paper the better team, which is Zero Morgan Dante. My Morgan was ass, absolutely ass. And anyone playing me in Marvel 3 would tell you that. But I wanted to make my Morgan relevant, and that was the quickest way. It wasn't just mid corner infinites that I needed. Everyone and their mother had the corner infinite. I needed something that was flashy. I needed something that would make my opponent pee themselves. So I learned Ryan LV's Morgan mid-screen infinite. And I think I can't think of anyone else that's doing it regularly.
Word. I like it. I like that a lot. And I like how that's something that we had talked about kind of throughout the show, is that you've got your execution down, you're using the hitbox, and you think it's a good product. You have thought it's a good product for years now. So with that, I think that's a show. Where can people find you and HitBox on the internet?
Sure. Hitboxarcade.com is the website. Like I said, the hitboxes will be back in stock. We promise very, very shortly. On Twitter, it's at hit_box. I'm at hitbox, one word, _Sora. YouTube is youtube.com/user/hitboxes. Own YouTube channel, which is HB Sora as the user.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's about it.
You streaming very often these days?
Now that Soul Calibur 6 is out, I will be.
Right, so immediately following this, you're going to hit play on the stream. And
I need some food first, but probably there will be some form of stream one way or another where I'm just messing with the lab. That address is twitch.tv/Sorakai.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised you haven't asked me about, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I guess
the meaning of Sorakai.
I've never really thought about that. It's something that I gloss over because I only think about the first half of it. I don't think about the second. Is there a part 2 to this?
Amalgamation of two of my favorite characters of all time, Sora and Kai Kisuke from Guilty Gear.
Yeah, I do like... Yeah, Guilty Gear has some good characters.
100%.
I'm partial to Cliff. He's got a big old sword. It's big. Mm-hmm. He's small. He's an absolute unit, but his sword is very large.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
I like him a lot. All right, no, that's all right. That's cool. And also with Kai, I'm partial to Robo Kai, but that's just me.
The dirty stuff.
Yeah,
the dirty stuff from X2, whatever that
plus
suffix
R.
of that game is, plus our Axel Core, whatever. But yeah, I know he was a lot dirtier than normal Kai, so yeah, there's that.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, man. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day. It was an absolute pleasure having you. You can find me, listeners, at Super Joe Monday on Twitter or Joe_Monday on Reddit. Or if you want to hit up this show at all, hit it up on Twitter at RedditSF. That's a show. We'll be back next week. Don't forget about the tournaments on Mondays and Fridays. Mondays on the East Coast, Fridays on the West Coast. But until next time, folks, take care.
Guys.